but we went a little bit more obscure this week. And we brought in some bands that had some good reps and in groups, I should say, not just bands, to see how they would do. And I know that two of the three albums this week were fresh listens for me. Before we get into Velvet Crush, Josh, how familiar were you with these three albums?
Not at all. I mean, I knew one song off of one album. That's about the extent of it. I hadn't even heard of OC or Velvet Crush before, and so I'm interested. We were really digging in the crates, as it were, to pull these
The
out.
stacks.
Yep.
Well, let's just jump right into it then. What did you think of Velvet Crush Teenage Symphonies to God?
Yeah.
Which is,
So,
by the way, a Brian Wilson lyric, and I did recognize that
oh,
from
okay.
Smile, I think. Yeah.
Yep, it is. Yeah, I saw that too. Yes. This is an interesting one because they kind of changed their sound from song to song and throughout the album. That I would guess you could classify them as like power pop or I don't know, like a little bit of like neo psychedelic, a little bit of country. That's kind of where they're kind of chameleonic in that way, in that
I would say
change.
a genre known as like trying to be Brian Wilson would be the thing I would say, which is okay, but
Yeah.
like that's what I
Well, yeah, but not everyone's Brian Wilson. So I don't know. There's things of this I really liked. They have some songs that are very reminiscent of like 60s or 70s stadium rock, but also like kind of like some folky type of sounds. They've got the opening track, Hold Me Up, has this great opening chord and is a pretty good opening song. It really sets the tone for the album, and it's just like this great kind of pop song. And then you go into My Blank Pages, has this great classic guitar rock sound, but then they like transition to almost like a country song and slow things down, and What Time Wraps Around You, and then going into more of like acoustic folk, and then like to Elvis Costello kind of with Faster Days, which is one of the songs I like a lot, and then go into rollicking piano and guitar with Something's Gotta Give, and I don't know. Then later on, you've got Weird Summer, which is more like Kinks-esque as well. Kinks song, reminiscent of that as well. And I don't know. They were kind of all over the place for me, and they were not strong enough to kind of be like a hidden gem. But I also wasn't like, displeased with listening to them. I think it was interesting because I couldn't. They changed their face too much in this album, and ultimately I think too that the lead singer's voice wasn't always that appealing to me. I think it depended on the song. I think they're a solid band, but there was something missing from me. I got really excited hearing it initially, especially in that opening track. I thought it was going to be kind of like a Matthew Sweet or like a Harry Nilsson type of album. It didn't end up that way, but it got my hopes up, and then maybe let me down a little bit. But it's still a solid record. What about you? What did you think of it?
Oh, I was higher on this than you were. I
Yeah.
liked the fact that this was like a buffet of
Yeah.
power pop type sounds, right?
Buffet.
Like
It's a good word.
if you want your power pop to have a little bit of country twinge and sound a little bit like our friends at Uncle Tupelo or Wilco, there's a little bit of that for you there. In things like Why Not Your Baby and the last track, Keep On Lingering. If you want sort of like a I think of it as like almost like a AM radio type pop rock type sound. You've got Weird Summer, which was the song
Yes.
that made me laugh when it was
Yes.
on there. There's things like Atmosphere I love, that is definitely like 90s alt rock version of power pop. You've got some songs that sound like Big Star songs. The earliest songs on the album, I
Yes.
felt like in particular,
I
Hold
think
Me Up and
that's-
My Blank Pages.
Yep. Exactly. I think that's why I like them too, because they did sound like Big Star at times.
They do sound a lot like
Yeah.
Big Star at different, and that's probably the first thing I'd say. If you're a Big Star fan, you're probably going to find yourself falling into this. I'm certain Matt will like this album
Hmm.
quite a bit. I think you said I was expecting Matthew Sweet. There's a lot of what like Matthew Sweet did in this. It just isn't as melodramatic or lean into the guitar.
Yeah.
90s fuzzier sound to it. This is a prettier, like cleaner sound, and that's where I joked around with the Brian Wilson thing, but like he's the patron saint of all of the people making this type of pop music, right? I feel like along the way. I didn't hear as much of like the British bands that you kind of mentioned, like the Kings. I know why you're saying that, but I didn't hear their influence as much. Maybe because I think of them having a distinctly British feel, and this sounded very American.
Okay.
And I felt like, and I thought the cover did a really good job of this. I felt like this was sort of like, let's take the things that we loved of under the radar, late 60s, 70s, and 80s bands that were pretty sounding songs and, wore their influences on their sleeve, and let's just put it in 90s production a little
Yeah.
bit and with a 90s vibe. And I feel like the kid on the album, the Drawn Kid, is sort of like the Paramore for that sound that's coming through. But I can't say I ever got bored of this album. I enjoyed it. It certainly didn't overstay its welcome. The 45 minutes went by very quickly.
That's true. Yep.
And on each of the listens I did, I enjoyed it. It's not reinventing the wheel. So I think if you're looking for like a hidden gem in the sense of like this album changed my life, or they're doing something here that's never been done before, that's not what this album is. But if you like good solid songwriting, good production, and stuff that has a little bit of a honey sound to the ears, a sweet sound, this album's right here for you. And I can see why there's a lot of like power pop in 1994 that's going on. So this is not an unusual sound in that time, but it does sound retro even for that time. Like it
Yep.
doesn't sound like the power pop of the 90s. It sounds a little bit more backwards looking, which is not a bad thing. And that's why I think the Big Star comparison comes, because I think that and Brian Wilson were the two things that immediately popped to, with a little bit of the country as
Yep.
well. They were pulling influences from the earliest stages of alt country as well. And that's where like we could even go back to something like the Monkees, and later with Michael Nesmith, right? What he's doing a little bit like pop rock songs with a country twinge.
Yeah.
The Birds, Sweetheart of the Rodeo. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's well put, and especially the part about the power pop of the 90s not sounding like this. It is doing more of a retro sound. And
Another way to say this could be like the 90s version of the Birds to some degree. It shares a lot of the DNA of what the Birds were. So like we've given a lot of reference points for you, but the songs are pretty well written.
yep.
I would say introspective would be the theme of most of the songs as well. Standouts for me, the two I put on the playlist are Atmosphere and Weird Summer. They're two very different songs.
Yes.
I enjoyed both. I also think the first two songs, Hold Me Up and My Blank Pages, are songs that I enjoy quite a bit. I know you mentioned the Elvis Costello song. Is that This Life Is Killing Me?
I put Faster Days in my
Faster
notes for
Days,
that,
okay,
but,
yeah. It's a little
but yeah,
long for an Elvis Costello song, yeah.
But I did like Weird Summer a lot. That was kind of a
Weird
different
Summer.
change of pace.
Even the way it was sung was
Yeah.
pretty funny. So yeah. Also a funny concept, like it's a weird summer.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good stuff.
So would you say recommend, mid, like where would you put it?
Yeah, I'd give this a recommend. I think if you're, it's like a mild recommend for me. I think if you're looking for deep cuts or looking for something you haven't heard before, which is what we're always doing on this show, then I think you should check it out. But if you're not into any of those things that we referenced also, then you don't need to listen to this.
They made a lot of albums after this too, and I'm kind of
really?
interested to see what they sound like. They have two different albums from 2001, although I wonder if they're just re-releases or something like that. I see there's a 2003 album that is 1 hour and 26 minutes. I'm looking to see if that's like a greatest hit. No, it's that long because there's demos of the album on it as well. So it's probably another 42-minute album. But it passes the test of would I want to hear more stuff they do. Also, Matt's gonna love this album. I think we
Yeah.
can agree on that, right? So like, it's a shame that he's not here to talk about it because this is right up his alley.
It could be
So
something that he is aware of already, for all I know.
if it is, it's like my brother put a song from them on a
Yeah,
mixtape. I think it's
exactly.
like how he stumbled into
Right.
it. Yeah. So
You know who else this kind of reminds me of in
who's that?
spirit? I think is the Mekons. You remember how they made like a
Yeah.
million albums and they're like a bar band that like does everything. It sound like I think they
hmm
could be in that vein as well.
I remember that album, yeah, being like a full palette of
Yep.
styles. I do feel that they leaned a little bit more into like at times like a classic sound or trad and stuff in there, and you plugged in their guitar a little bit more
Hmm.
as well. Although it's hard with them because they every album sounds different.
Right.
So it's I don't think I feel like this band is going to continue to be a power pop band
Yeah.
throughout their history, but the Mekons, we covered Mekon's rock and roll, right, which is
Yep.
one thing, but I think depending on how you're, familiar with them. But I know what you're saying. In the nature of you being an omnivore,
Right.
like in terms of the music, it definitely fits that way.
Nice. Good
Okay.
stuff.